Ian's Ballads are far and away my favorite game mode in Rise of Kingdoms. Let's help you slay it. Hello my friends and welcome back. In this video, we're going to give a very brief guide for Ian's Ballads. We've got the Takra Forest as the first challenge that is available here, and let me just say that we had a ton of fun playing this, and this is a 4-person game mode. If you like Rise of Kingdoms videos that help you get value and smash your enemies, consider subscribing to the channel for daily Rise of Kingdoms content. As you can see here in the Takra Forest, there are 3 bosses. They give each of you a chance to get some sweet loot for your entire party, and this game mode gives you 2 hours to play through before ultimately you are defeated based on time. In this mode, you pick one march to travel around and battle in a map where you're walking around and exploring. It reminded me of Warcraft 3, which was insanely fun. We'll show some footage of that game mode and some of the bosses just to give you an actual look at how that works, but let us just take an opportunity while we're on this screen to show you one of the core mechanics in the Takra Forest, and that is right over here. Increases skill damage by 10% each time they use a skill, and this effect can stack. The name of the game in this particular game mode, or in this particular map, is stepping out of combat very briefly in order to have a debuff fall off of you. All of the folks that are in this pretty much are going to be putting a stacking debuff onto you, and it makes you take a huge amount of damage, but you can literally take 2 steps away from the target. They'll stop hitting you, the debuff falls off, and you go back in again, and you're good to go. This is a game mode where you are going to want to rock an army expansion. We were able to beat Hell mode with a 25% expansion, which was very solid. We felt pretty comfortable with that using T5 troops. If you don't have T5, you might need to use a 50% if you want to go for the higher difficulty and for some of these sweet rewards. Each of the bosses has a chance to drop different stuff. This one has the Revival Gauntlets. The second one had the Revival Plate. The next one had the Revival Helmet. And I love that everybody has a chance at the drop. It's not like you get one full drop and only one person can get it, and whichever one grabbed it first gets it. This is pretty solid. We'll go over each of these boss fights, maybe actually showing you some of the footage from the second and third, since I think they were more challenging and a bit more complex. This is an event you can do with a random group, by the way. I would much prefer that you do this with some folks from your alliance and get into your alliance Discord, because of course your alliance has a Discord channel, right? Some voice chats so y'all can hang out. If not, make sure somebody in your alliance sets that up. There is a little bit of lore text over here that isn't all that important. Let's cut right into the footage, and as we go through that footage, we'll talk about some optimal combos that we would recommend for this event as well. All right, here we are inside of Ian's Ballads. This is from the live stream where we battled this out for the very first time with the 4 horsemen. That's me, Negan, Abe, and also Groggy. And yeah, here I'm going to demonstrate a couple things. This is already after the first boss. I don't want to spoil everything, but as you can see, we're kind of looking around the map here. There's a ton of fog that you clear as you progress through the map. Now, what we're doing at this exact moment is, rather than just charging on into the action, we're using a classic MMORPG technique called pulling. The name pull, I don't know if I know the exact origin, but the idea is you take some number of monsters you want to fight and pull them to a position where you want to fight them. So rather than just charging into this mess of bad guys and trying to fight all of them at once, we're picking 1 or 2, pulling them back to a location that is optimal for us to fight them, and then doing it there. I'll be honest, we're just having a grand old time as we're doing this, and this is not to demonstrate perfect gameplay, it's to demonstrate some of the core mechanics and ideas. Now, in this particular part, you can see that people turn into camps. After you're out of combat, you can camp your march, and that's not the little camp icon like you push to go home or to hold the march still. It's a separate icon that you press that is going to turn you into a literal campsite, and you just heal up. So you're going to heal up between every fight, and the style of pulling, by the way, that we're using in this game mode is called a face check or a face pull, where you're literally walking into range of the thing that you're going to fight and then bringing it back to the position where you want to fight it. In other styles of games, you have pets that can go pull the monsters, or you use a bow and arrow. In Rise of Kingdoms, we use the old face check to sort of step around the corner and pull them in. And we're actually about to go fight a boss here. Now, you'll see as we fight this, and this is at 2x speed, there's a debuff that's applied here that is going to make it so you take a bunch of damage. So every time you have that debuff stack up above like 10, step away, just like 2 steps away from the boss. They'll target something else, the debuff will fall off, and you're good to go. So we're about to kick off this fight. And, I'm sort of looking around the map to see if there's other stuff that we need to do. Thankfully, the way this works is, unlike other games where the boss might summon all the other ads to come fight you because you didn't clear them, that's not the case here. You can see I've pre-selected my cursor, having it ready to actually move my march away before I need to, and we burn this down very quickly. Many of the bosses in here are vulnerable to cavalry, so bringing cavalry is a pretty solid choice. Also, I did costume change in between here. The previous portion I filmed and this portion, I should have done like a snap transition to go from one to the other, but whatever. Boss is down. Now, anyone can open the chest and everybody will get the loot. And there is something called a resting campsite, where when you park your troops there, you're going to have the opportunity to, if you die, come back to life in one of those campsites. You saw a second ago the rewards we got. They were fine. There were actually a couple pieces of gear that are unlisted in the blacksmith that you can't actually make even if you combine the pattern, which was really interesting. We now move into the next portion of the zone, which, spoiler alert, okay, there's some spoilers here. Spoiler alert, after this series, and there are like 5 different waves that you fight here, the boss drops in right away, and there's not really an opportunity to camp. I did actually camp for one of these for 1 second, so I did get 1 second worth of healing in, but it's not obviously sufficient for doing this. And we were fighting these very casually, having a great time on the live stream. You probably will want to check that out. If I didn't put a card up in the top already, I will, because man, we got some super chats that were trolling us. One of those super chats was awesome. It was hilarious. But they said to run down through the forest. Again, spoiler alert. And there were a couple shamans that dropped runes. Those runes will fall off of you when you die, so you will need to get the rune again. But in this game mode, if you pull more than you want, that's also called kind of aggroing, that you have the attention of more than you had intended. You can't reset the pull by walking away or leash the pull back to where they sort of started spawning in. They'll chase you until you die or they die. So once you aggro something, you can't leash it. You're stuck having to deal with it until you die or they die. Now, here's the final boss fight, which requires you to immediately kill the totems that you see. The fire AoE that you see on the screen here, you can't get out of, so you're just going to have to deal with that. And the cloud AoE, you probably will want to get out of and be on the lookout for a totem to be put down shortly after. We did wipe up the first attempt, and then we went and we did this again, and it was pretty easy. All in all, this was a lot of fun. Like, this is arguably among the most fun that I have had playing Rise of Kingdoms for a very, very, very long time. I mean, this game mode, I made a joke of like rating it on how many lucky coins would you give this event. The lucky coin is probably not a very good rating scale because you'd never want more than 1 or 2, but whatever. So, out of, 3 lucky coins, 0 to 3 lucky coins, I think everybody was close to giving it like almost 3 coins worth of goodness. Here you can see we're going to take our troops out, and a part of what's awesome about these resting campsites is that you can bring new troops. every time you die. So you can switch from one type of troop to another, or one type of commander to another. And to that end, my recommendation for most of the zone is that you use a Peacekeeper primary or Khan, because Khan is so high DPS, with either Esong secondary for doing AoE damage to multiple pulls. If you don't have Esong, Sun Tzu is a great choice. Or you could use, for this particular boss, now that we're on sort of a single target damage encounter, I would recommend using Cao Cao as the secondary to your Khan. That seems like a really solid choice. So go for the single target damage when you get to here. So we're going to grab the loot in just a second. Other pairings that you'd use in the early game that I think will be good. Boudica Sun Tzu seems really solid, and I think everybody ought to have, like Boudica and Sun Tzu. Those are the first two commanders that I recommend you invest in. You could have somebody bring a tanky march. Folks were saying in the live stream that Kusunoki clears the debuff that these guys are doing when they're hitting you. So you could have one army that has Kusunoki and Richard I, and they tank the entire time. And that I think would actually be pretty solid. I would actually like to see that sort of role specialization in this mode. By the way, you see me looking around. I said for posterity, we have to explore the whole map, right? And I said, that means we got to pull all these guys over here one at a time and deal with them. And I think Negan ultimately decided, or maybe it looks like it might be Abe. He's like, oh yeah, actually, so Abe pulls it, and I think Negan makes the call that, like, we don't actually care if we die. It's basically irrelevant. What if we just walk past them and explore the rest of the zone? So there he goes, aggroing the zone. And you'll see, you could really end up with more than you bargained for. So to summarize, you're going to want to bring potentially someone who's tanking. That person uses Kusunoki because his first skill clears debuffs, and that's no exception for this event. And Richard I, so that they actually have a lot of tankiness and healing and sustain. You don't have to worry about healing in the middle of fights. You will heal in between fights. For that reason, everybody doesn't need to be bringing healing commanders, and you should bring cavalry because most of the units in here are weak to cavalry. I think it will be worthy of considering having somebody bring a Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc could be really quite effective in this game mode, buffing everybody around you. It could be that the commander diversity would be better than going all in on high DPS like we did. Let me know what you do for this down below in the comments. Consider dropping a like on the video if you enjoyed this or learned something new, or even just found this guide to be helpful. Subscribe for daily Rise of Kingdoms content that helps you get value and smash your enemies, and until next time, you have fun smashing the kingdom.